Hello once again. In previous video, we got an introduction to SQL and the relationship with R. We would continue by getting familiar with some common terms associated with SQL. First, what is a database? A database is an organized collection of data. When we're talking from our own field, using R, we'll assume a database as a collection of data frames called tables in database terminology. Next, what is a database table? We can describe a database table as a collection of named columns where every value in the column is the same type. To run a database on our local system or dedicated server or directory, we need a database management system, which is commonly referred to as DBMS. Okay, for short. So we have three basic forms, namely client server DBMS. So this runs on a central server, which you can connect to from your local machine, which is recognized as the client. That means your local machine is the client and your DBMS running on a central server is where the main information is. That's your server. So the most common client server DBMS includes MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, SQL Server, and Oracle. So the next one is Cloud DBMS, which runs in the cloud and can easily handle extremely large data sets. And also, it provides compute resources as needed. So this type of DBMS includes Amazon's Redshift, Snowflake, and Google's BigQuery. The last one, but not the least, is the in-process DBMS, which runs entirely on your computer and are great for working with large data sets as well. So in cases where you are the primary user, this will be a best fit for your project. So SQLite and DocDB are examples of this type of DBMS. So now for this workshop, we will stick with SQL queries in R using DocDB. So we'll be learning how to connect through DocDB to a database, access and manipulate data, and use SQL queries seamlessly within R. Without further ado, let's dive in. So now we're in R Studio. First thing we have to understand is that before we can connect to any DBMS within our studio or within our environment, we have to use some packages. So the first package that we're going to use is DBI package, which is shown here. So this package provides a set of generic functions that can connect to the database, one, upload data, two, run SQL queries, and much more. So we'll also need a package that is specific to the DBMS we are looking at connecting to. So in this case, we're looking at DocDB. So we'll need a package that is specific to DocDB. So generally speaking, there is usually one package for a specific DBMS. So that is that. So now we'll be using the following now. The DBI, just like we've explained, which is the database interface package. We're going to use this as well, dbplyr, for us to be able to use dplyr functions within a database. Then also DocDB for our DocDB DBMS that we're going to connect to. Then our trusty old tidyverse for so many things, data manipulation, data transformation, iteration, and so on and so forth. So if you don't have all these packages installed, make sure you go to our previous video to get to install a package. We describe how you can do that there. Then the next thing will be that we load this package. So I'm going to do that now. So let me restart the session. So then I'm going to load the packages. So now we have the packages loaded as required. So the first thing now is that before we proceed, we need to connect to the WMS. So to connect to DocDB, we are going to use a function this way. So the function that we're going to use to connect to the DocDB interface is the same thing for other DBMS as well. So the DBI, database interface package, this is the name. Then we'll look for DB connect. So it has some arguments there, but in the case of DocDB, we're not going to be using a driver, but we're just going to pass in the name of the DBMS that we're going to use. So this, in this instance, is going to be doc from the DocDB package as well. DocDB package. So that will be doc, and the function also is DocDB. So this is just as simple as it can be. So if I run this, we'll have the DocDB connection instantiated. So, but we want to keep the information that we're having, then we can assign it to a variable name, which is going to be con. So if I take out this, then I place this here. So we have the same thing, and we're going to assign it to a variable name con. So remember, this is just a blank connection. So if I run this, we'll have the con in our environment, but we don't have any database there. There's no database inside this connection that is attached to this connection. So if we want to add that, then we have to go a step further by coming down to line 15, the code on line 15. So we add a comma after the docdb function. Then we have another argument, db dir, that's the database directory name. So it's going to be coffee d underscore db. That's the name we're going to give to our database that we're going to create. So if I run this line of code, then we have a complete connection with a database. So that is that. So if you want to view what is inside of your variable, you can just put in the name, then control enter. So all this information are just warning. We don't have to get confused there. It's just telling us that, okay, if you are not using the DBMS or any database, you don't have anything doing there, just disconnect. So, but the information for the connection is all available here. Okay, so, and it's also telling you that we already have a DB here. So it's been created for us. So the next thing is going to be that we're going to have to create some tables. So the first table that we're going to be creating is going to be from a query, a SQL query. For those who are familiar with SQL, this string here represents a normal SQL query. So I'm going to copy this out and go into a SQL script. Okay, so okay. Okay, let's just go ahead and install that. But while we're waiting for the installation, we don't actually need to install any SQLite here. It's not compulsory, but it's just to follow the norm. So I'm not using SQLite in this video. I'm working with DocDB. So, but I just need to put in some queries here that will not show in a different way that is different from what you're familiar with. So this query, this is a SQL query, and it's acceptable in this script because it's a what? A SQL script. So, but I'm not going into any DBMS outside of RStudio. I'm using the DocDB DBMS. So this is the syntax when you want to create a new database, whichever at least 99% of all DBMS understand this query. So you start with create instruction, then followed by table. These two are compulsory. They are compulsory terms or words that should be used when you want to create a table, followed by the name of your table. Then we have to give something that we call a unique identifier, which is going to be the primary key, the name of that column first, followed by the type of data that you want to keep in there. Then the another kind of definition which shows that this is going to be a unique key. There is not going to be a repetition here. So we have to be sure that, okay, all values are not duplicated. The next one is going to be a variable. So it's a variable, is a character. So it's going to accept strings, numbers in strings or anything. So it's not going to be used for any arithmetic operation or maybe a unique identifier in whatever way. So then the next thing is also, the next one is the country column, which is also a string, a character string. So let me go back to our script, the R script. So instead of just having the query written blank and being assigned to a variable name, we have to put it in quotes and it's going to be saved as a string. So this string is now going to be saved as LOC query. So that is the location query that we are going to use to create this. So I'm going to run this so that we have that saved as a variable. So that is that in our environment. So if you want to see what is kept there, it's still the same query, but we just knowing that, okay, we're going to a new line. So all these I understand, the our DBMS will understand it and R also knows what is inside. So the next thing we have to do is that we need to execute this query. For us to be able to do that, we still need the help of DBI package. This is the database interface package. Then we have to get the function DB on the DB execute. That's the function. And this is going to take the arguments for our connection, which is going to give us the information about our connection, the type of DBMS that we're connecting to, and also the name of the database that we've created. So this is where we'll now add the last argument, which is going to be our query. So to make this easy or easier for somebody to comprehend, that's why we're saving as a variable. We could have gone ahead to say we copy all this string, Control C, and then put it in here. So, but this kind of too long and it's not that neat. I think it makes sense to save it as a variable. So we'll leave it here like this, then we'll run that. So with this, we should be able to see the list of tables in our database because we have only one database in this connection, so we're not going to have any issue. So if you look at my console, let me clean this up a little bit. So I'll run that again. So we only have one table. That's the locations table. So let's go ahead and run through the other script that the SQL queries that we've created, and then we'll be able to create the other tables. So in this instance, we are creating the shops table and it has the coffee shop ID, which is also an integer and is a primary key. Then we have the coffee shop name, then the city ID. If you remember, we have the city ID here in location table, but I'll show you now the connection between the location and the shops table. So we have the city ID as an integer as well, but we also want to state that the city ID is a foreign key. That means here in this table, it's not uniquely identified, but it's a foreign key that is uniquely identified in another table. So that is why it's a foreign key here, but it's a unique identifier for this table. So that is that. Then we have to also state that the foreign key is coming from the locations table and it's referring or referencing the city ID column. So this is our query. We'll save that again, then run the query. If you want to check, we can also check. Now we have two tables in our database. So let's rush through this and then we'll create the employees table. Then we execute that, the employees query, we execute that, we get the employees table. Then we'll also go ahead to create the suppliers query. Then we execute the query. Let's look at the tables that we have. We have 4 tables now: employees, locations, shops, and suppliers table. So the next thing is that we want to view the created table. So remember, no data set yet, no data set yet. We just have blank table. So we are going to use another function from the DBI package, that's the DB read table. So this function, remember, if you want to get more information about any function that you're not familiar with, you can also always put the question mark, the name of that function. Then you click Control Enter, then you have information or documentation about that function. So this is it is read tables as data frames. Okay. Then it has some arguments there. The first thing is that the connection, okay. Then the name of the table that you want to read. So this, I'm using the pipe here, but you can also kind of simplify the function as db read table. Then the first thing is the connection, which is going to be our con. Then next is going to be the name of the what? The database and the table. Excuse me there. So if I run this, I will get something information about the table. Then this is not shown as what is table, but it's a database object. So we can convert that database object, that's the table, into a table that is understandable by R, as in the form of a data frame. So using the pipe, I can always run this and you have something to describe it as a table. So now that we have our structure, the database structure created, we would want to insert information or data into the database tables. So these are all written down for us. We don't want to take much time. So I'm going to use another query syntax, that's the insert queries. So we're going to use the first keywords, insert into, then the name of the table, then values is going to be more than one value that we have because we have more than one column. So that is going to be values, open and close the parentheses with values for all the columns that are within your database table. So that is for this one. So you can see that it's easier for us to be a data analyst using R and SQL and working from just one single IDE, RStudio. So you just need to just understand how you move around. So for the first query now, the insert query that we have, we can execute as we've done earlier. So we execute this. Then now let's look at what we have in there using the same thing, syntax. Don't be confused. This is the native pipe, while this is the Margarita pipe. So if you still want to use the single line query function, we can use the same thing here without using the pipe. So I'll just replace this with locations. So, and we'll be able to see our database objects. But if you want to see it as a table, we have to add as underscore table from the dplyr package. So, and that will give us a table structure 3x3. So we have 3 observations and 3 columns. So that is for that. So the next thing is that let's insert values into the other tables and we won't spend much time here. So that is that we execute. Remember, you get your query, you execute. Your queries, you execute. So for the employees table, that's a long one more. So then we have to execute. So that might give us some time. Yeah, that's successful. So let's look at what we have. We have 1,000 entries for the employees table, and that's fast. You can see it's really, really fast. DocDB, that's one of the excellent features that DocDB has. So this is where we're going to stop for this video. I'm going to disconnect from the data, the DBMS now. That's the right thing to do. So you disconnect as well as shut down your in-process server. So I'll do this. So that is going to be the end of this video. So thank you so much. I look forward to meeting in the next video where we'll talk about the other queries of SQL that we can run from within R. Thank you. Bye.